The weirdest concept cars we all forgot about. Concept cars are meant to do two things. The first is present the world with a new, and hopefully exciting design language in an effort to gauge the public's reaction to styling elements that will eventually be translated into actual production vehicles. The second, attract as much attention as possible, because a concept car that no one sees might as well not exist. On occasion, this pair of requirements have been less than complementary, with designers creating searing vehicles that draw a crowd more like a traffic accident than a work of art. What are some of the weirdest concept cars ever built, and then mercifully forgotten? We dredged the past for 10 of the most out-of-the-ordinary concepts of all time. Isuzu Nagisa. Have you ever wanted to drive your boat and your car at the same time? Probably not, but that didn't stop Isuzu from launching the Nagisa concept in 1991. The most likely explanation is that the designer was on a tight deadline, was leafing through a boat magazine, and decided no one would notice if they simply slipped a set of wheels underneath the modern cabin cruiser. Peugeot movie. The winner of a Peugeot design competition, the movie rode the city car craze that was just starting to gather steam back in 2005. At first glance it resembles nothing more than a giant hamster ball, spinning its human prisoners through traffic with a level of crash protection more commonly associated with Tupperware. Those yellow plastic interior trappings including a pair of seats and what looks like a Fisher-Price table don't do it any favors either. Perhaps the scariest car you'll never ride in. Aurora's safety car. Plenty of people lost their lives in car wrecks before the invention of seatbelts, crumple zones, and airbags. Although Volvo was a pioneer in bringing automotive safety to the mass market, a handful of small design shops also tried their hand at producing a car that wouldn't kill you, and the Aurora safety car was one of the earliest examples. Produced in 1957 by Father Alfred A. Giuliano, an artist-turned-priest-turned-designer, the car neglected style in favor of elements intended to protect occupants and pedestrians from injury. These included belts, padding throughout the interior, in place of the steel and chrome dashes and door panels that were common at the time, a steering column that collapsed rather than impaled you, a roll cage, seats that swiveled out of danger, and a windshield that bulged way out in front of the heads of riders to prevent any potential impact. Combine the latter with a unique bumper scoop intended to knock people off their feet rather than slam the full weight of the car into their bodies, and you have a recipe for an ultra-expensive, nearly as pricey as a Cadillac, concept that never saw production. Dodge Super 8 Hemi. Think of the worst styling trends of the past, grafted onto the largest possible canvas, and you've got a pretty firm idea of how hard Chrysler whiffed on the Dodge Super 8 Hemi when it rolled onto the stage in Detroit for the 2001 auto show. Great big chrome side streaks? Check. Strange. Forward canted windshield? You got it. A total lack of rear headroom? Why not? A gaping grille framed by wide, carp-like headlights? Of course. Throw in a set of suicide doors and it's a pastiche of elements that barely work on their own. Let a Buick Signia. Buick tried really hard to predict the upcoming crossover craze with 1998 Signia concept, but they were roughly 10 years too early and 1,000 miles away in terms of styling. The biggest issue with the Signia is a complete lack of a cohesive design. Almost everything about the wagon-cum crossover looks tacked on, which it was, as the vehicle rode on the Park Avenue sedan platform, especially the rear cargo area with its ample, bulbous greenhouse, and the heritage-inspired grille that doesn't mesh with any other aspect of the vehicle. It was a prelude to the next GM vehicle that prized practicality over presentation, the Pontiac Aztek, and we all know how that worked out. Citroën Carène. Forget boat cars. It's all about pyramid cars if you're Citroën, which dropped the Carène rather unexpectedly at the Paris Auto Show in 1980. This tower of power featured a fully glassed-in triangle top with a unique 3-across seating arrangement that placed the driver squarely in the middle of the action. There's so much glass in the Carène that the actual rooftop panel is roughly the size of a manila envelope, which can't be all that great in a rollover, or, really, any type of crash. The steering wheel is also a masterclass in Citroën's oddball 80s design, as it flows from V-shaped to U-shaped from a tunnel line with buttons and warning lights sewn together. Launches below. In the late 70s it was clear that car designers thought the wedge would save the world, and all manner of thin at the front, thick at the rear body shapes were birthed into the show car circuit. It was a design motif that would eventually date its era of origin more accurately than any radiocarbon test, but at the time it felt like the future was happening all at once. The Lancia Sibilla was no exception. Offered to the crowds at the Turin Auto Show in 1978, it incorporated the same platform as the Lancia Stratos, but stretched by Bertoni to create a sort of shaved bar of soap look. The Sibilla also featured rear fender skirts and an electronically sliding porthole carved into its door glass. Ford Sinus. Picture this, it's 2005, and you're driving down the streets of a post-apocalyptic American city, a formerly proud metropolis now riddled with bandits, danger, and destruction. Despite this, you've got nothing to worry about because you're behind the wheel of the Ford Sinus, the armored offspring of a Brinks truck mated with a Honda Element that is impervious to the slings and arrows of the killbots and murder gangs roaming the dystopian landscape thanks to steel shutters that can drop down to protect the vehicle's glass and lights. At least, that's what we think Ford's designers had in mind when they created the Sinus, an inexplicably named rectangle of a concept that ultimately was placed on the back burner when the escape from New York future it so clearly anticipated failed to materialize. You know you're in trouble when one of your design inspirations is an urban armadillo.